Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back with our next monk guide. Today we're back on my original bullshit, which is Brewmaster Monk. For those of you that are longtime viewers of my WoW videos, you know that when I first started really growing as a channel in the sort of small section of the WoW community that I take up, it was because I was making a lot of content around Brewmaster Monk, which wasn't being done by a lot of people at that time and still really isn't being done by a lot of people. And so a lot of the sort of OGs of my channel that of commenting, there's a few of you that I'm thinking of, know me for playing Brewmaster Monk. I left the class early in Dragonflight because I just got burnt out on Monk, but now I've been back to playing it again and still have realized and remembered why it was one of, if not my favorite tank. I think it competes really heavily with Bear for being my favorite tank in the game. But it is doing pretty decent, all things considered. There are still some fundamental problems with it, and I've laid it all out in like the monk videos that I've done in the past. But in this video, what we're going to talk about is how to get you started with this spec in patch 10.2. So we're going to cover talent builds, basic rotation information, stats, consumables, enchants, gems. We'll even look at things like your trinkets and talk about your crafted gear as well, so that you have everything that you're going to need to kind of get yourself kind of at a baseline level kicked up and ready to go for the rest of this expansion, really, because this is officially the last patch of Dragonflight before we get into the World Soul Saga, which I am very excited about. But that's neither here nor there. We'll do more videos on the World Soul Saga as we go. Alright, so as you can see, I've got my Brewmaster Monk now. This is my off-spec right now because I am maining Mistweaver right now for raid purposes. So as you can see, I'm only 456. If you remember from the Mistweaver video, I was sitting at like 465 on that. And it's because there's a few things that clearly hold me back. Like I have this pole arm that I got from the Dream Surges, the last patch, and then I have poor trinkets, and there's a couple of items there that I'm still working on building up. I'm probably going to switch this over into my Elemental Lariat here in just a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. Let's start with talent builds. So we're going to start with the Mythic Plus build, as we do in all these videos. The Mythic Plus build from the perspective of looking at this dungeon pool, there are a few choice options that you can put into any of these builds. For this part, I think for the most part, this is the spec tree that you'll use regardless. Really, the only talent points and things that I want to point out that you can swap up are things like Diffuse Magic. Outside of Dawn of the Infinites, I've come to discover that Diffuse Magic doesn't really do a lot in a lot of the dungeons this season. While there is some decent magic damage in some of the other dungeons, things like Wakecrest Banner, there's some magic damage, but there's a lot of physical damage there. But a lot of the dungeons are like really strong physical damage. So Diffuse Magic, there's not really a lot that you can do with it outside of Dawn of the Infinites, where there is a ton of magic damage in Dawn of the Infinites that Diffuse is going to be really good for. So the option to play Yulon's Grace, which basically just gives you absorb, like a consistent absorb shield throughout your magic absorb shield. That's 2% of your max health, and it's, you know, even in this gear set, I'm sitting at almost 1,000,000 health, and I'm not even like really been maximizing this gear set. So I'm sure if you main Brewmaster Monk and I've been focused all your gear into Brewmaster Monk, you probably sit well over 1,000,000 health. So getting 2% of that, that's, you know, what, 20,000, 200,000 health, something like that. 2% would be 20,000, up to 10%. So you're getting, you know, 100,000 shield on, you know, basically every 20 seconds. Not bad. So you can kind of switch this talent point out as you need to. I run Diffuse simply out of habit, but I think outside of Dawn, you can probably skip and play Yulon's Grace. That Dampen Harm, I don't really think is all that good for Brewmaster Monk, mainly because it does have that wide variance in terms of 20 to 50% damage reduction, whereas you can here just get a passive 10% dodge increase. So it saves you a button, which Brewmaster does have a little bit of a button bloat issue, but it also does allow you to gain 10% more dodge, which, you know, is a big part of your mitigation as your Brewmaster Monk is dodge itself. Beyond that, I think there's some not really anything else here that really should surprise anyone. You use Chi Burst here. Chi Burst you can use because you know, it does have that projectile forward, but Chi Wave is just kind of safe because it bounces amongst the enemies, whereas Chi Burst you have to stop and cast. Even though it's less than 1 second, you do have to stop and cast, and that's not because of anything involving your damage mitigation. It slows your rotation down. and Brewmaster already has like really like overly full global cooldowns, so any delay in having to do that like makes the process a little bit weird. All right, so what does this build look like from a spec tree perspective? So there's a couple of things that you can look into with this build as well that could potentially remove some button bloat here. You could run press the advantage. I know that there was some builds in last tier, and I was playing a couple of them where you didn't run weapons of order. You took press the advantage. But I think with the way that scaling works, weapons of order is just going to be better when you combine it, especially when you combine it with Nijao, which doesn't happen often because of the weird offset cooldowns. And you don't take walk with the Ox, so you do only get Nijao every 3 minutes, but Nijao is pretty weak this expansion. He doesn't really do a ton that is going to be really effective overall. As far as other talent points, you can definitely run special delivery instead of rushing Jade Wind as well. I've seen kind of a 50-50 split on how you're running this. I think it entirely depends on how often you're running your brews and how much you're drinking a purifying brew. I think special delivery does have better synergy when you run it with light brewing, whereas if you run training of Nijao, I think it's better to run with rushing Jade Wind because you're not going to get as much value out of special delivery when you don't get the 20% reduction in your cooldowns. This is another talent point. I think you can just trade it up. I run light brewing because it's very much safer, but training of Nijao does allow for a little bit more aggressive playstyles, a little more aggro playstyles, because you're gaining that mastery, which does increase your attack power. Beyond that, I think this build is pretty standard. Like, there was some talks of playing, what was it, Dragonfire Brew? Excuse me, but I just don't think that it does all that much compared to Jarred Passions. Dragonfire Brew, there was some niche play with it. The other point that a lot of people will debate is taking a point in high tolerance. I think that high tolerance is just like a safe point. You could easily put it into a point into like Walk with the Ox, or you could put it into something like Anvil and Stave. I just don't see where, even something like Facepalm, like, I just don't see where any of this kind of comes into play. Fundamental observations, like, not good. So like high tolerance is just kind of like the best of where to put a point. So, and then of course you have Exploding Keg and Storm Stout's Last Keg, which is one of the best quality of life talents in this entire tree. You do run Bone Dust Brew, again, because it's just good damage, and compared to having more common, or with Chi Surge having, like, making weapons of order stronger, just having Bountiful Brew, just getting more Bone Dust Brews out, just does good. Of course, it does damage at the targeted ground, and then also can do a little bit of healing, so there's that flexibility to it. But really, it's just about getting the additional cooldown on your brew, so you kind of always have a brew available to you, whether it's Purifying or Celestial. Let's see. I don't really think there's anything else saying. And with Raid, like, the Raid build doesn't change a ton. There's a few small things that we can play with in the Raid builds. I don't Raid tank a lot anymore because it's not my favorite thing to do in the game. So, like, but some of the points that you can get, obviously here they run like improved roll because you need a way to kind of get down this side of the tree. You don't really need detox, you don't really need Ring of Peace, so it's just kind of a way to get down the tree because it is a gate point. And of course you do take the Touch of Death talents here with Fatal Touch and Improved Touch of Death. Again, Fatal Touch because it's your only way to get to Resonant Fists. But there are definitely different builds that you can run. So this build right here, we actually run Weapons of Order instead of Press the Advantage. This build right here is kind of like a standard build. You're going to get some decent value out of it. Flex points here are that you can actually take the point out of Improved Roll to get White Tiger Statue. Again, it adds to your button bloat issues, but it's just going to be the most damage overall that you can get. There is a build called the facepalm build where you run blackout combo, but I don't know like how much it's going to be valuable. It's much better offensively for a pretty decent sacrifice of your defensive potential. So I definitely would stick to more this build here. There's some little tweaks here and there that you're going to be able to make to it that will allow you to gain the most value out of it, but this is just going to be the build that gives you the best overall damage and healing. It does have a lot of buttons to it, but I mean, it's just you come to expect that out of a Brewmaster monk right now. So this is build like, so there's really only one build. I have two things here. This is an old build that is no longer viable, so gonna delete that. So this build right here is what I would run for raid, where you're running kind of standard. A lot of, I mean, from the perspective of the tree, you're basically getting light brewing and counter strike for Mythic Plus purposes, just because you get the spinning crane kick damage, and light brewing just makes your brews much more consistent for Mythic Plus purposes. Whereas in raid, a lot of the damage events that you're going to need to stagger are going to be much more like, they're very much like much more rigid. So having training of Niche Owl is going to be good, but you can definitely put the point in light brewing here. Of course, you take the 2 points in high tolerance just because you want to make your stagger much more effective. Your goal here is to be a little bit more defensive in nature as much as humanly possible. So overall, the builds don't change a ton. It's just a couple of small adjustment points that you take. Though that's one of the issues I think right now with Brewmaster is that there's a lot of dead talents in this tree. But you know, small little adjustments just to make you, it's like maximizing the last like 200, 300 DPS in your build. That's really all it's doing. All right, so what about rotation? So rotation for Brewmaster Monk is hectic, to say the least. So because you have basically all the same buttons, let me fix one real quick. Okay, I do have that. But I'm gonna move it here. So from the perspective of like the basics, again, we're gonna talk basics here. Your basic core rotation is going to be that you want to keg smash before every breath of fire, blackout kick, and rising sun kick. And then in AoE situations, you can also spinning crane kick. So this is kind of like your basic rotation. It's just going to be breath of fire, and then you spinning crane kick basically to get your energy back. Now, in terms of cooldowns, expel harm, you're going to use quite a bit as a way to heal yourself, as well as do a little bit of damage. As you can see here, I got 4 orbs out, so you can see boom, boom, and they all took a little bit of damage. Something like Exploding Keg is really good to use on cooldown, especially in big packs, because it does big damage, and then also makes it so that the next melee attacks they all do are guaranteed to miss. So it's a good way to use it like on pull to guarantee that while you're getting your stagger build back up, you can go. And then you have your cooldown buttons, your Weapons of Order, your Nijao, your Tiger Statue, your Brew, as well as your Chi Burst, or Chi Wave rather, that you just kind of use on cooldown as you can in between. So the full rotation is going to look something like this, where you're going to keg smash, round, black, let's go here. Where's I forgot which button. Where's Bone Dust Brew? What button did I put Bone Dust Brew on? Oh, it's 9 in this build. It's this one. Forgot. I gotta fix my buttons for Brewmaster. So anyway, so you're gonna you can see we've got all of our cooldown ability used. So you basically just are doing a lot of making sure you're keg smashing on cooldown. You want to maintain your rushing, Jade Wind if you have it. Again, you can see me using cooldown. As you can see, we're doing pretty decent damage overall. So, I mean, really the core of it is keg smash, breath of fire, and then rising or blackout kick, because you get the shadow boxing treads talent, which is right here, which makes your blackout kick hit additional targets. So for AoE damage, you're always going to get value out of that. Rising sun kick is good to use in a lot of single target situations because it just does heavy damage. And then your cooldown abilities you want to use on cooldown every time that you have them. So it is a very hectic rotation. There is always something to do, so you should not have any empty global cooldowns at all while you're playing the spec. So it is a very fast-paced spec. You're gonna have abilities just sitting off cooldown just because you can't. You literally don't have the GCDs to go through. So you have negative GCD downtime, whereas for example, like a Ret Paladin, I know has some downtime in their build. Brewmaster has negative downtime. Like, you don't have enough GCDs to push everything that you want to push. So that's the basic rotation. I have the guide here. Go back and watch the video to kind of see what I was doing once I figured out my buttons, which I got to fix on my Brewmaster Monk because I need to kind of align them a little bit better with what my finger habits are, but neither here nor there. All right, let's look at your consumable situation. So again, incandescence is going to be the helm enchant. Now for tanks, I believe, let me grab what the incandescent helm enchant does for tanks, because I haven't memorized these because they're still kind of fairly new. Tank effect. Abilities have a chance to apply a fire dot and shield you for the same amount, procced by taking damage and lasting for 12 seconds. I'd be very curious to see if that's going to impact your tier set bonus, which let's talk about that while we're talking about gear. Actually, we'll come back to that after we finish the enchants. So for training, I have Leech here. It's because I main Mistweaver Monk. However, Avoidance is probably going to be your best bet. But Leech or Avoidance are going to be fine. I think both of them are okay. We're talking minuscule advantages here. So if you play all the Monk specs, then Leech is probably a safe bet. Avoidance is also a safe bet. Waking stats, of course, on your chest. Same thing with Cloak goes for your wrists, Leech or Avoidance. For this, again, obviously these are my main Mistweaver legs, but you want to use a Fierce Armor Kit, which gives you the agility and the stamina. On your belt, if you can afford it, do the Shadowed Belt class, because it still does give 150 stamina. Now on my server, they're like 35,000 or something like that. They're like 30k last I checked, 30k plus. So it's not worth 150 stamina for that type of investment, but if you have the gold to spare, or you can craft them, go for it. Watcher's Loam or Planesrunner's Breeze. I think you can do either. Brewmaster Monks typically has the lowest HP pool, so I think Watcher's Loam is generally a better bet, because anytime you can increase your Brewmaster's health pool, you make their effective HP like that much higher. So I think Watcher's Loam is always a good safe bet, and Brewmaster Monk, or Monk in general, does have pretty good mobility with 2 charges of roll, Tiger's Lust, and a Transcendence is needed. So you do get this really nice option of speed and mobility. So I don't know how much Planesrunner's Breeze is going to help. On rings, you typically want to go with versatility enchants like I have on this ring here. And of course, the Bandits with Spark, I have haste because it's my Mistweaver and my Mistweaver set as well. But typically versatility, maybe even mastery rings or crit rings are going to work as well. Crit or verse, I think they're pretty equal in terms of their value for Brewmaster Monk. We'll talk about stats here in a moment. But so crit or verse, just kind of whatever is going to, I think whichever you have the least of, you go get. And then for your weapon, you want Sophic. Of course, I only put Writ on this because it was just a World Quest polearm. So not really worth investing a devotion in. But if you get like the polearm from the raid, then obviously you want to put in a Sophic devotion. Now, dual wield setups are viable on Brewmaster Monk, where you can grab a Sophic devotion on one and a Shadow Flame Wreath on the other. But obviously the enchants on that are pretty expensive for Shadow Flame Wreath, at least on my server they are. So again, if you have the money to spare, you can go that route. Or if your 2 best weapons are just, single one-handers, then, go for it. But dual wielding is very much viable on that. 2-hander is overall going to be better when you choose pure, like, best in slot items. But if you get 2 strong one-handers before you get a strong 2-hander, you're not going to be hurting yourself really at all. We're talking very minor, like 1% differences that don't mean a lot in the long run. They're not going to make or break you're getting a raid kill or clearing a dungeon faster. So let's talk about your stats, and then we'll go into the tier set and crafted gear. So with stats, crit is still going to be your best stat by far because of the Ox's Fortune passive that you have, where based on your crit percentage, you could potentially get healed twice by an individual heal. Now this does affect your gift of the Ox Orbs, if I recall. I think they changed that to make that finally work. And also any heal that does come in on you from a healer. So if a Resto Druid drops a regrowth on you, that regrowth potentially heals for a little bit more than it would, say, on like a Blood DK, because of the fact that you have this chance based off your crit percentage for it to do a little bit more. And crit obviously just does really well for damage perspective. Versatility is still really good. I don't think it's as like the end all be all of stats for monk. Like in Shadowlands throughout, you were crit verse, crit verse, crit verse, crit verse. And even early BFA, you were pretty much crit, or early Dragonflight, you were crit verse. Versatility is still good. You still want to get as much of it as you possibly can. I still think aiming for roughly 20% is probably a good overall idea. But mastery is going to be pretty good here as well. I've seen a lot of high-end brewmasters go like almost pure crit mastery builds, and they only get like 15% verse, and they go high crit, high mastery, because you get the gain of attack power, and then you get the increased dodge chance as well. So like there is value in that. I think overall, like if you get a crit verse or a crit mastery piece, unless one is significantly higher eye level than the other, you just sim yourself for damage. And see what happens. You know, so it's really just a matter. So like if you have like a crit verse piece that's like 450 item level, and then you get a crit mastery piece that's 465 or 463 or even 473 in eye level, the crit mastery piece is going to be better, period, because it's just a 10 plus item level jump. And that's a really good thing about Brewmaster for gearing purposes, is that if a piece of gear is generally 10 item levels or more jump over what you have previously, the stats on it are irrelevant. The stamina and the agility alone are going to make it big enough defensive and offensive upgrades that you're going to want to take it. So even for like me, for example, like I have in my bags a 454 one-hander that's haste mastery. Like if I can get another good one-hander that's roughly equal eye level, I'm going to be running a dual wield set, even though haste isn't something that Brewmaster really wants at all. It's just the fact that it's a sheer, you know, between, I mean, you can see, like, let's just assume I get another 454 weapon, I'm getting, you know, 480 or 680 agility, so it's almost 100 agility increase. I'm gonna get 2600 stamina, so 500 stamina increase. Let's just say it has the, let's just say I get another one of these hatchets. I'm getting 614 haste and about 280 agility. So the secondary stats might be out of line, but the pure damage, like you can see, just this axe is 650 to 1352 weapon damage. Like it's almost as good as what my staff is, and that's strictly because of the fact that there's basically 20 item levels between the items. So really for Brewmaster, if it's more than 10 item levels, just take whatever piece is the highest eye level. The stat variability for Brewmaster starts to come into play when you are looking at two equal eye level pieces. So other consumables, you're going to want to run Tepid Versatility as your file. It's just a safe pick. Deviously Deviled Eggs or Feast is going to be good because it just gives you the agility, which is going to be your best one. You're going to use Buzzing Rune as the rune on your choice. Of course, Potion of Ultimate Power for your power pot. And then for gems, you're going to want to run these here, these Radiant Alexstraszites, which are crit verse gems. They're just generally the best one. All right, let's talk about gear and your tier set. So for the perspective of gear, what we're going to talk about is mainly just focused on the best trinkets and what crafted pieces to go after. But let's start with tier set. So the tier set, Breath of Fire deals more damage as Shadow Flame damage, causes you to heal 50% of the fire damage that you deal. And then your attacks against targets afflicted by Breath of Fire have a chance to deal 15% extra damage as Shadow Flame, which plays into the 2-piece. And then each Celestial Brew also grants a stagger absorb of 100% of the Shadow Flame damage you have dealt, causing damage delayed by stagger to instead be prevented. This is actually a pretty good tier set. I think it's one of the better ones for tanks this tier bonus. I think they probably have the best tank set. It's just other tuning that makes Prot Paladin and Blood Decay that you've been seeing a lot of in the raids, top tier raids. There's other aspects that just make those tanks viable in those setups. But I think Brewmaster Monk, if you need a monk to go and you don't have a dedicated Mistweaver, Brewmaster is going to be a pretty good pick because this tank tier set is pretty good. It has really good, obviously, damage through the Breath of Fire bonus damage, but also the defensive value through the 4-piece is actually pretty good. It's really hard to track. You're not going to notice it all that much, but when you really start going into like a details breakdown or something like that, you're going to really notice the damage taken differences that you're going to get once you obtain this 4-piece. All right, as far as crafted gear goes with embellishments, what you're going to want to do is most likely you're going to want to come craft your boots, which you're going to grab the slimy expulsion boots. Basically, they reduce your haste. We don't care about that, so it doesn't matter at all. But you get the extra like 5,000 nature damage that you get, and then you're going to want to get a toxified armor patch because it increases the effects of the slimy expulsion boots. So the toxified armor patch, I'd put it on a belt craft or on a bracers craft if you can. And of course, you want a flavor pocket for quality of life that you can throw on anything you want, anything else that you want, rather. So I think those are going to be your two embellishments that you want to chase. And then if nothing else, in terms of other crafted gear, like if you really need to, you can grab a primal molten longsword or an axe or one of the crafted molten weapons to flesh out a dual wield setup if you're struggling with like decent weapons. All right, now let's look at trinkets. So trinkets, I'm going to grab the Wowhead guide because it just does a good job of explaining, like showing off the reason why I'm going to recommend these. And if you can, under any circumstance, grab Tainted Rage Heart off of Farak. Normal is pretty easy to clear at this point. My guild cleared it in about an hour the other night. I know if you have to pug it, it could be a little bit rough, but if you're in a guild, make sure that you get this trinket as much as possible. Versatility, a good stat for us, and the equip effect is very, very good. Does Shadow Flame damage, which I believe plays into our tier set. So it's a short cooldown. Like it can't be done every 90 seconds. Basically has an internal cooldown of that, so it's really good. Really strong damage. It's just like it's one of the best tank trinkets that they've made in quite some time. Other than that, I would look at some of these more offensive ones here. Obviously, the Augury of Primal Flame. You're going to be competing with quite a few crit specs that want this, but also very good just with a strong passive damage proc, so it's effortless to use if you like passive damage trinkets. This is going to be a great one. Same thing with Bandolier of Twisted Blades. This is an on-use trinket, but really good for AoE. So I would definitely grab it for AoE. Farak's Tainted Rage Heart you use in all situations. Like it's good single targets, good AoE. It's a good offensive trinket. It's a really good defensive trinket. Like just get this trinket. You're going to you're going to be happy about it. Bandolier of Twisted Blades, again, a good AoE trinket in particular because it does do Shadow Flame damage, split between the target and all enemies in the path, so there is some directional use with it, but you can take advantage of it. And then out of the dungeon, it's not very high up here, but this Prophetic Stone Scales is the cheat death trinket. Always good to have a cheat death trinket if you're looking for a pure defensive trinket. This is definitely going to be a good one to grab. Other than that, you just want to go grab almost anything that you can out of the raid. Like most of the raid trinkets are going to be good. The Signet Brand is good. Coiled Serpent Idol is good. Gift of Ursine Vengeance is good. Like if you're a Brewmaster main, like you're going to need to go in and do the raid in order to get your best trinkets. It sucks if you don't really enjoy doing the raid or struggle to get in raid pugs, but if you're going to maximize your character, you're just going to have to do this. If you're looking for dungeon trinkets, I would go grab the Prophetic Stone Skills. The Midas Talisman is a good on-use one that has been buffed significantly. It's really only good single target damage, so it's not really good for Mythic Plus, which means I'd grab like Accelerating Sandglass. It's fine. It's just the stacking haste proc, which is not the greatest thing. Ember of Nullification is fine. Like it's a good pure defensive trinket. Porcelain Crab does give you a little bit of stat boost, so like there's a couple of decent trinkets out of the dungeons, but if you're wanting to get the best ones, you gotta go do the raid this tier. Like there's not really any avoiding it. All right. So overall, Brewmaster Monk, I think, is in a fine position. I think it's a very, very good tank. I don't think it's the best tank. I think you're going to see in Mythic Plus, Vengeance Demon Hunter is going to do a lot of domination. And now that the Legendary has been revealed, I think you're going to see Blood Decay make a rise as well, if the damage is as good as Mirez and Co have been making it seem. So, like, the overall tank meta, so to speak, probably won't see Brewmaster in there. It'll be good, but it won't be the best. And, I think that's probably okay overall. It means that you can do almost every content that 98% of players are going to do as a Brewmaster Monk. Yes, it has button bloat issues. Yes, there's a lot of buttons to press. Yes, it still has some damage intake concerns as well, but for the most part, with good play, you can really avoid those concerns. So that's the end of this video, guys. A little bit shorter than the Mistweaver Monk one, but 30 minutes, but a little less to talk about with Brewmaster Monk versus Mistweaver Monk, in my opinion. Overall, though, I'm excited to get into this thing with keys in particular. I do plan on doing a lot of tanking keys this season in order to gain 2,500 on every spec. Like, that's a goal of mine that I've set, so I'm on that path. So we're gonna see me playing a lot more Brewmaster Monk. I'll probably put some dungeon videos out of me playing Brewmaster Monk. So till the next video, I hope you stay safe. I hope you're all enjoying yourself. You have fun. You keep on gaming, and I'll see you next time.